Well, I'm not working on this right now. I'm just examining it before I put it away for a later date. This is a Phon-Ola. At least that's what it says it is. Something I picked up at one of the flea market. No, I'm sorry, I didn't. I got this from a odd little, sort of Sanford and Son type junk shop. Not too far up the line from here, along with a bunch of other stuff. I get good stuff from that guy all the time, but doesn't usually have machines like this. Unfortunately, never seems to have Victors, Victrolas, which is what I usually play with. I don't really mess around too much with the off-brands unless I see something like this, which is like, it's real wood. So this is definitely going to be 1920s, and it's in my wheelhouse. I can make this work. It's essentially made out of plywood. That's not even veneered. That's just finished plywood. That's it. It has Heinemann parts. Your typical, heavy. Typical Heinemann motor in there. Doesn't say motor of quality, but some of them do say that. You can see some things are unhooked over here and all kinds of little things going on. The motor is intact. Everything seems to be there. I don't think it has a broken spring, but it's going to need all of the usual servicing that any of these machines need. See what's in there. It's just a box. This little area here, can you see that in the back? That's your horn. That hole right there, that's where the tone arm goes. I'll show you that in a sec. There's the lid. Its screws have fallen out on the hinge, so that's going to have to be repaired. Again, a project for another day. It is too cold and too windy out here for me to be screwing around too much. And I wanted to see what was hiding down in here anyway. Nothing really. What do we have in here? We have some small screws. Uh-oh, I see a little screw. Where'd that come from? You see a little screw there? That little screw. Looks like something would come off a motor. But the motor's not missing anything. And it's actually too small for the motor. Maybe the reproducer. This disaster is the reproducer. Yeah, it does have screws like that, but none of them are actually missing. Huh. A mystery. This reproducer is pretty well trashed. It's never going to be played again. I mean, you can see the needle bars torn out of it. All the pot metal's falling apart. What does it say on there? Does it say Phon-Ola? PAL. It says PAL. Yep, Plaza Music Company, PAL. This doesn't even belong to this machine. At least I don't think it does. A little bit of a mystery here. And I'll show you. See if I can get this in here in such a way you can actually see it. Not the best angle, but you see there's two different labels here. The label underneath the yellow label says Phon-Ola. Okay, we've seen that. The Phon-Ola Manufacturing Company of Dayton, Ohio. We saw that in that like a 1948 type generic player I was messing around with last week that really didn't work very well. That also says Phon-Ola under the Waters Conley company. This is not Waters Conley. This is an earlier company. The original Phon-Ola, I guess it would be. But the label on top says the Gibson Distributing Company, Louisville, Kentucky. And I would have to tear off the Phon-Ola. Would I? Oh, no, I wouldn't be able to because it's gone. The label there is gone. I'm sorry, I can't do. I don't know what it originally said there. I don't know what name they stuck on this. Impossible to say. Well, there were so many different names used on these types of machines that it is just dizzying. You'll never remember them all. Whole books could be written on just the off-brands alone, and I'm sure they have been. You can see we got a lot of loose, not veneer, but deteriorating plywood here. This is where the tone arm goes. Very, simplistic tone arm. Not my favorite kind because you can't flip the reproducer over in these to put the needle on. You could tip it up a little bit, but that's it. They're always a pain in the neck to put the needle on. And then you end up stabbing yourself. This is all bent to hell, but that can be fixed easily enough. Well, I should probably just take that and do that with it. What else have we found here? Everything else seems to be here. It's got a, common turntable. Actually has the crank with it. I should try to see if I could crank that motor up and see if it'll spin. This is, well, I'll leave it in here, but a waste of, there might be one part or a few screws I could salvage off a reproducer like that. Let me see about putting this on its little stilts here, its little legs. And put it aside. Oh, that wind is nasty today. We had sideways rain earlier. Don't you just love sideways rain? It's always so much fun. Where's that little crank? Let me see what I can do. Get this on here. Hard to say. There we go, fits. It was a little bit stuck. Oh, it actually does work. Yeah, it's working. Spinning a bit faster than it should, but then let's see if we can get the speed control to work. Yeah, there we go. Speed control's working. Huh, spinning surprisingly quiet and well. These were pretty good motors. I will give Heinemann that much, that they did make pretty nice motor. Not always the easiest to work with or find parts for, but because they made so many different types. But they are a pretty decent motor. They even had a fiber gear in there to reduce noise, and limited amount of brass. There's some, but not much. So not nearly as difficult as a Columbia motor is to deal with sometimes. Standard types latch on there. Looks like they just painted it brown. In fact, I think that's what this is. I think that's brown paint. I don't even think that's stain. I don't think they even put stain on this. I think they just painted it brown. Huh. It's got little corner protectors there. A lot of metal around this to hold it together. I mean, I guess it's not a bad idea to use plywood to make a portable phonograph cabinet, but plywood of that era did not use the types of glues that are available to us today. So, of course, there would be issues. Why am I getting... is that not... There we go. The little cover was covering the lens. There wouldn't be the same issues today. I mean, you leave plywood out in the weather enough, it will do this also. I don't think this has been left out in the weather. I think it's just dampness and age and old types of hide glues they probably used back in the 1920s that are coming apart. You can see here it's doing it, and over... Where else did I see it? Somewhere. Oh, yeah. Over here. Oh, that whole area there is doing it. What's the bottom look like? Ugh. I'm not sure. This might end up being a parts machine. But being that it has a Heinemann motor, I know I can make this work. They put the handle back here. I don't think I've ever seen that, actually, on a portable, where they put the handle in the rear of the cabinet. Usually it's on the side here. Sometimes it might be in the front on some models. Not usually in the back. That's kind of strange. That's basically you're putting it down in such a way that the latch is on the ground. I don't know why they would do it that way, but that's how they chose to do it. You never really know who designs these things. Sometimes they could be pretty fun to work with, and sometimes they could be a royal pain in the ass. And I might pedal this one down the road too. If somebody just had to have it, I might say, all yours. Take on the project. Make it happen. Dreams can come true. Own your own Gibson manufacturing company, whatever this is. And this, oh, we got leaves still falling here. And we do have the hardware to hold all that down. But whatever I do to... Look at that. Nothing holding it under there. Whatever I do to this, it's not going to happen until the springtime anyway. It's just too nasty this time of year, and I have other projects I'm working on. Been doing a lot of reproducer rebuilding, getting caught up with that. Mostly exhibitions and number 2s. I think I did a number 4 last week. I usually hold that stuff back until we get weather like winter, because I can do that indoors. I'm not wasting time. That could be better spent scrubbing motors and polishing cabinets and things of that nature. Okay. And my connection down south, who finds me all kinds of machines, found me a Oak Victrola 9 the other day. And I'm not looking for 9s. I have enough 9s. They're too heavy really for me to mess with. I don't want to deal with them. But it's an oak one. And oak is kind of desirable. It was a 1914. So it was an earlier one. It still has an isolated horn, but it has the flat bottom. And that guy would not budge off $375. And this 9, while not a basket case by any means, needed everything. It had wood issues, they had to be cleaned up. The motor needed servicing. The reproducer hadn't been touched since 1914. All of that going on. And, my buddy was bargaining with the guy before he even told me about it. I said, don't bargain with him. I don't want it. I'm not getting involved in any more 9s, even an oak one. I have 2 oak 9s and numerous mahogany ones. I have a 1919 oak 9 that has the feet on the bottom, and I have the custom triple spring deluxe model behind me in the little shed. That's 1913 with the flat bottom. I don't need any more of those. But the guy wouldn't budge. He just had not gotten the message that, you don't get that kind of money for even an oak 9. Even if it was really nice, you're still not going to get that kind of money. But what else did he find? Oh, yeah, that was the guy. I think I told the story in the last video about the guy with the record boxes that initially were supposed to be $50 for 2 of them, plus some records. And he suddenly decided that it was worth 60 or 65, whatever it was, after the deal had been made. And that's dirty pool. You don't do that. It's not how deals work, people. Okay? When you make a deal with somebody, it's done. When the other guy accepts your offer, it's done. Now, if he walks away, comes back a week later and says, okay, then maybe you could say, well, you could have had it that day for $50, but you just said you didn't want it. I've had another offer, so now the price is 60. Then maybe that's your fault then. Yeah, not his. But with my buddy standing right there at the table, suddenly the price goes up 10 or 15 bucks after the deal is made. You don't do deals. That's not how deals work. All right? You bargain with a guy. If you want to bargain, you don't have to. Nobody says you got to bargain for your junk, Nobody says that. You can ask whatever you want. There's an old saying from a movie. I think it was Grumpy Old Men. Burgess Meredith. What a character. Burgess Meredith. Love that guy. Anyway, he plays the grandpa. And he has a saying he keeps repeating. You can wish in one hand and you can crap in the other and see which one gets filled first. Well, that's the same thing when you're asking all kinds of money for your stuff. If it's a fair amount of money and you know it's fair, you've done your homework, you've cruised the internet, you've done the shows, you know what something goes for, then you're speaking from authority when you say, I want $300 for that. That's a good price. I know it's a good price, and all this. But when you just make something out of whole cloth and say, you know what? I want $1,000 for that. It's a $50 item. I want $1,000 for that. Okay. You have a good day, sir. Nice doing business with you. Almost doing business with you. You put a price down. I want $25 for that. And we'll just use this as an example. I'm not asking $25 for that. But anyway, I want $25 for this. And then you come back and say, I don't know. It needs a lot of work. I'm thinking probably I'm in at maybe 15. Oh, I couldn't do 15. And, I'll tell you what, I'll meet you in the middle. How about 20? And then usually the deal is done at that point. It's $5. That's how you do a deal. And once that deal is done, you don't come back when the man's reaching for his wallet and go, you know what, maybe I'll want $35 for it after all. Now the guy's going to put his wallet back in his pocket, turn around and walk away and not even look at the rest of your junk because he's got your number. He's got your number and he's not dealing with you. So that's the art of the deal. That's how you haggle at flea markets, you know? Never pay retail at a flea market, all right? If they say they want $65 for something, you look at it and go, oh, I don't know. I have 3 of these already. That's a Buck Brothers orange handle. I don't know. I like the red ones. That tip's a little, but I don't know. Maybe and then you offer $10 less or $20 less, whatever's fair. Don't be stupid and say, I'll give you $2 for it. Don't do that. And then, he'll either say yes or no. If he says no, walk away. You'll find another one somewhere else later on, tomorrow, next week, as good or better. Nothing we really collect is that rare. A few things are, but very, very few things. Many, many times I've walked away from things at flea markets, estate sales, tag sales, and what have you. Don't need it. See you later. Have a nice day. I hope you sell it. And a lot of times they don't because they're asking too much money. Sometimes they get lucky. But never go into it. I've seen people do this. Usually they're like at a flea market for the first time. They're out of the city or something. They don't know how to deal. They don't know how to make a deal. Maybe they were never taught. I don't know what it is. Like the lamps I bought at the last flea market. I'm standing there. I'm in the middle of a haggle session. And he breaks off for a minute to ask a couple that was standing there, if he could help them with something while I'm looking something over. And they hold up a lamp. How much you want for this? And he says, I want $45. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, that's worth about $30. Oh, okay. They put it down, pull out the $45, give it to him, and walk away. And he just smiled. Put the money in his pocket. And I smiled too, because he wasn't getting away with that shit with me. I'll tell you that right now. We had a long haggle session going on there. That was not happening that easy. No, he could tell the difference on who was the city boy and who wasn't by the time we were done. Anyway, never pay full retail anywhere. You walk into Walmart or somewhere like that, you pay the sticker price because it's an established brick and mortar store. It's what you do. A lot of antique stores, you're not going to get away with haggling too much either, although you should always try. Is this the best you can do on this? That's what you always ask. Any wiggle room on this? Anything like that? It seems, they never say it seems like inflated or high or anything like that. Don't criticize the price. Just ask if there's any wiggle room on it. There any, you want, what is that price, $25? Is there any wiggle room on that? Maybe a little room on there. I don't know. Times are tough and, never criticize their pricing strategy. Just ask if there's wiggle room. And if there isn't, they'll tell you. No, I'm afraid I can't. My customers, this consignment, they said they wanted $25 for that, and that's all they'll take. And I've run into that. What did I buy? That was a consignment deal with a guy. A little shop, 1 gallon shop vac. I think it was a 1 gallon, little one. Little shop vac like this. Looks just like a big shop vac, actual shop vac company, wet dry vac. But it's a little one, and I like that for the little jobs. I hate hauling out my gigantic shop vac for a small job, little job. It's easier with the small one. And I was at an estate sale, and I picked it up. I walked up to the lady in charge, and I said, how much for, before I even got the words out of my mouth, she goes, my client will only take no less than $10 for that. He has to get $10 for that or he'll keep it. And I'm like, okay, I would have dropped $25 on the table easily because I know retail on something like that's about $65 or whatever, around there somewhere. And I even plugged it in and tested it. I know it works. And I'm like, okay, here's your $10. Okay, not a problem. Here you go. I have no quarrel with that whatsoever. Every now and then you run into something like that, but not usually. At the estate sales, I have a lot more wiggle room, especially since I know a lot of the people that run those sales, and they will let me know if the family's involved in the sale or this is a straight-up clean-out, where they've been brought in by a lawyer or someone else to liquidate the estate of someone who's passed away because they're selling the house. They want everything out of there. That kind of sale, I know I'm going to fill a whole bag full of crap, and it's going to be $5 or $10, no matter what's in there. I'm going to make a haystack in the front yard of stuff, and it's going to be maybe $50. If the family's involved, they're going to nickel and dime me, and I'm going to buy 2 things and walk away. I don't care, whatever. Like I said, remember the rule. You will find it somewhere else, same thing, as good or better for less money. So never be in too huge of a hurry to jump on the precious, Anyway, you see something like this at an estate sale or something like that, you pay $5 or less for this in this condition. Don't drop 25 or 30 bucks. If you needed that motor that's in there and you went to, say, George Valima, he's probably going to charge you, I don't know, 45 bucks. That's eBay price for a motor like that. You put that on eBay without even cleaning it up, and you're getting, around 35, 45 bucks, maybe even a little more. Price varying according to what the motor is. A little motor like that, probably around 35 to 45 bucks. But if you go to an estate sale and you buy something that looks like this, that's going to be, $5. That's what it's going to be. The same thing with the flea markets. Something in this condition. If this was in nice shape, not necessarily serviced, but in decent, whole condition, everything's properly attached. Maybe it spins, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it spins a little bit, but hangs up because it needs lubrication. It isn't flaking off pieces of veneer. Then you're going to, it's going to command a little bit more money. Not a lot more. Remember, it is an off-brand, and most you're paying is going to be about 25 bucks in there somewhere. Now, if they've taken the trouble to do what I do to it, which is a full service on the motor, found something that works for a reproducer and fully serviced that, cleaned up all the wood, glued all the loose veneer, do all of that crap, that's going to add to the price, obviously. Now you're into $125, $140, maybe $150, something like this. You're never going to get Victrola prices for a Phon-Ola, but if you do the work to it, you're going to get a little more, because now someone could just bring it home, put it down on the table, put a record, crank it up, put a needle on it, and play it. It doesn't need anything. They get instant gratification. Some people are willing to pay for instant gratification. Me, I like them in this condition. I want to do the work to it. I want to rebuild the motor and clean everything up. I want to do the reproducer, mostly because then I know it's been done right. I know that, that what I did is done the correct way. Somebody else's work, I don't necessarily know. I don't know who did that work, what their level of experience was. Did they substitute parts, make interesting substitutions and stuff like that? So it's always nice when I get all dusty and grimy and needing work like this. I don't like to see stuff that's already been refinished by somebody. And where's the fun in that? It takes all my fun away. I don't get the pleasure of 20 hours of going over that machine, little by little, fixing things as I go. I don't get that. Then it takes the pleasure away. All the fun is gone. So I don't mind getting them like this. And come springtime, or maybe over the winter, if I have time, I will mess with this. How does that? You know something? I think they have that in. Oh my goodness. I get it. I'm thinking the Victrola 50, where this would be flush there. I see how this works. This is just on the back, and it just opens and closes like that. All right. That little mystery is solved. Now I understand why the screw holes look weird. You see it has record storage? See where they put the records underneath? You take that little thumb wheel off there. This felt pad comes out, and you can store some records in there. We got a dead spider. How nice. And then you can, you know what? Under here, it does look like they use some kind of varnish. But that wood grain, they painted on there to look like mahogany. That is paint. They're faking mahogany. This isn't even mahogany veneer. This is a fake mahogany. I'm thinking maybe this machine might have been one of the giveaway type machines that was real popular back in those days, in the 20s and 30s. They wanted you to subscribe to like records or something like that. Albums are regular, like get a record a week until you have the whole set of some kind of classical music maybe, or hit of the week, whatever it might be. And as an incentive, you would get a cheap player of some kind. Think the camp phone. Here's a good example that's better known than this. The camp phone is the Health Builders Record Company, something like that. The Health Builders Association. It was a series of records for exercising, narrated by Walter Camp, the father of the rules of modern football. Walter Camp narrated the series of records, and they pressed them, and they offered you a deal where you would sign up, think Columbia House, sign up, you get your record a week, and you would get a free player. So you could play them. You could take it to the park, do your exercises in the backyard or in the park with your free player. Top quality? No. No more than this is. Not even close. Not even remotely. But it was free. It was a giveaway, basically. Well, it wasn't free. You were paying for it somewhere. But it was a very cheap machine, and it would get the job done. It would play for you. Remember, this was the 1920s. It didn't have the pot metal issues yet. That wouldn't happen for another 60, 70 years. So you could just play it. Let's see, this is coming apart here, too. We lost some tacks. Yes, oh, that's too bad. It's a weird-looking tack on there, too. Somebody's been replacing a few of them. Huh. I might have to use screws, maybe. That must be a really short tack. It's not very thick wood. That's going to be fun to deal with. I might have to glue it on there. What was I talking about? Oh, yeah, Walter Camp. Anyway, they called it the Camp phone after Walter Camp. But they ended up getting sued later on because their series of exercise records was a little, I guess their business model was a little bit too close to somebody else's who had been doing it longer. They sued, copyright infringement, they won, and that was it for the Health Builders exercise records. Yet they must have been very popular because I find them all the time. And I have come across quite a few camp phones. I think I own at least 2. Neither one of them is in great shape, probably like this, but I do own at least 2 camp phones, maybe 3, I don't remember. Could be that's what this is for. Or just a cheap catalog sales machine. Back in the catalog with the see-through eyeglasses, the X-ray vision eyeglasses, and what were those little things you dropped them in water and they, whatever. You would have something like this for like $3, $4, $5. The dollar pocket watches, that kind of thing. They probably had something like this. The how they made the cabinet, though, is pretty strong. I mean, they really did reinforce those corners. That would do some damage if that slammed into you. That's some pretty thick metal there. I'm going to have to open it up to get that back in there. But, well, I figured I would show this before I put it away for the winter, and I forget all about it. It's the other Phon-Ola or Gibson phonograph company. Whether that has something to do with Gibson guitar, don't really know. Probably, because a lot of musical instrument manufacturers wanted to get in on the phonograph craze of the teens and 20s. So they they didn't manufacture their own machines. They contracted somebody else to make them, or they made part of the machine themselves and went to Heinemann for the motor and the tone arm and the reproducer, all that kind of stuff. Which machine did that? Aeolian. The Aeolian Piano Company. I just sold one, actually. Not a piano, a phonograph. And they had a line of phonographs in the 1920s to sell it there through their dealers. Along with the pianos in their catalog, you could buy a phonograph. They wanted to have something to offer their customers. A very well-built machine, too. Not a bad, I sold it to a guy who wants to do to it what I would do to it. He wants to do it himself. He wants to learn. He wants to take it all apart, clean everything up, put it back together. He's not far away, so if he needs me, he knows where to find me, for help. And he knows how, it kind of does need refinishing. He knows how to do all of that properly, so that's good. But there you go. There's a look at the Phon-Ola, the Gibson, the whatever.